Hello there, blood bathers. Bloodbath Erik here. Just wanted to drop in the beginning here, tell you what is up before this episode starts. The most recent episode here was an impromptu discussion started with me and my co-host. Once we found out that Rowdy Roddy Piper had died, the conversation goes a little bit long, and we decided to actually split up this podcast into two parts. So the first part is going to be primarily wrestling talk. So we're going to talk about the life and death of Rowdy Roddy Piper. We're going to talk about the recent Hulk Hogan controversy, and we're going to discuss a little bit about racist gimmicks in wrestling, especially in the WWE. That'll be this first part of this episode. The second part, which I will drop probably in the next couple days, is going to be our discussion and various tangents on some comic book related news, which for us is the Comic-Con trailers for Dawn of Justice and Suicide Squad. That podcast is going to be a little longer than this one. I don't know the exact running times because I still haven't fully edited them down. I'm going to give you some contact information for the podcast. As always, we are on iTunes. If you want to support the show, what you can do is you can go to iTunes and please subscribe and give us a good rating and give us a good review. Okay? That is the best way for you to support this podcast so we can find some new listeners. Okay, after that, if you would also like to support us, we currently have a wish list on Amazon, which you can find via our email address, which I'll give you that shortly. And this is so we can buy some equipment for the podcast. We need things like mic stands and whatnot, and those are listed there. So if you want to financially help out the podcast, you can do that there. If you don't like us or you'd like to argue with us, correct us, have suggestions, comments of any kind, both positive and negative, you can reach us through the following ways. You can reach us through the email, which is bloodbath2podcast@gmail.com. Now that's the numeral 2. So bloodbath2podcast@gmail.com. Okay, we also have a Facebook page that, yet again, you can find just searching Bloodbath2Podcast. We are on Tumblr, which is bloodbath2podcast.tumblr.com. Now, in all of these, when I say 2, it is the numeral 2. You don't have to spell that out. We are on Twitter. It is at Bloodbath2Pod, P-O-D, at Bloodbath2Pod. We also have a YouTube channel, which is Bloodbath2 Podcast. Basically, if you do search for us under Bloodbath 2 Podcast in pretty much any format, that is where we are. That is where you're going to get us. So, like I said, I just wanted to let you guys know that, yes, this was one long conversation cut into two, which is why there is also going to be only one intro and one outro for the whole thing. Here we go. Take it away, guys.
You know, you look like your head fell on the cheese dip back in 1957. You're okay. This one, real fucking ugly. Oh, you see, I take these glasses off. She looks like a regular person, doesn't she, huh? Put them back on, formaldehyde face. That's what we got.
That's enough out of you. Get out or I'll call the cops.
Call the cops? You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
Welcome back after a short hiatus to another episode of the Bloodbath 2 Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hugh Jackman.
And I'm Iggy Azalea.
Ew, really?
Mm-hmm. I'm here to tell you all about the hard knock life.
Really? Because I can't actually understand most of what you ever say. So if you could elaborate now, I'd love to actually hear.
Well, you know, It's really hard out here for an Australian, especially when you're a white girl pretending to be black.
You're Australian?
Yeah.
You don't
You didn't know
sound
that?
Australian.
You didn't know that?
You sound,
G'day, Bruce!
You sound about as Australian as you do black.
Yeah. Iggy Azalea is horrible, the end.
Anyway, not to start on a bummer, but we got to talk about something that happened just today.
Sucks.
Somebody is no longer with us. Now here at Bloodbath, we have a simple policy about things. A lot of podcasts, and you'll hear them talking about people who have died, and they don't want to do it. They don't really want to talk about people who have passed. They consider it negative or a bummer. But the fact is, I think it's incredibly important to highlight the creative people who are no longer with us, regardless of what medium they were in. It's important to talk about the fact that these were people who were around for a long time, and we should celebrate them. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a bummer or it has to be negative. You know, it's good, and it will bring attention to some people who might not be familiar with somebody's work. Unfortunately, we started this podcast at a time when like 3 people died in a row, and I really did not want to do those.
Yeah.
We might do those on the anniversary of those deaths, and that was Ornette Coleman, Christopher Lee,
And Dusty Rhodes.
And that was all on the same day, and that was pretty horrible.
Yeah, that's not okay.
I wanted to do tributes for them, but we just couldn't get around to it because we had other stuff to do. But today we lost one of the greats in the world of professional wrestling.
Also a podcaster.
And his podcast is a bit of a train wreck. I recommend it, but you could kind of tell that Mr. Roddy Piper was
Clunked on the head
probably not long for this world, unfortunately.
Clunked on the head a couple of times in his career.
It's still a wonderful podcast, and if it stays up, everybody should download every episode and listen to it because the man is fascinating.
Yeah, he is.
And one thing about him is that he was insane. He was a character. He was a card. But he cared so much about what he did, no matter what it was.
And about the business.
Whether it was podcasting or acting or being a professional wrestler, he had nothing but passion for whatever he did. I really recommend the episode of his where he talks with John Carpenter, who directed him in the great movie They Live.
Oh, wow.
And it's very clear that Roddy is... I mean, John even says it at one point that you're a perfectionist. And you wouldn't think Rowdy Roddy Piper, of all people, would be a perfectionist of his craft, but he absolutely was.
But you would, because it's not like he can just get in the ring and start screaming at people. Like, that takes skill.
Okay, and the thing about it is when you look back on 80s WWF, the Hulk Hogan era, the rock and wrestling connection and all that, there really are, when you look back with the critical eye and you try to get rid of the nostalgia, there really are only a handful of, maybe only a couple, great all-around performers. Like, really. I don't know if I want to put Hogan in there, but beyond a shadow of a doubt, Piper is probably the number one all-around performer of that era, bar none. And yes, his matches weren't really great, but he understands what wrestling is, what it can be. He knows how to relate to the audience. He knows how to tell a story, and you know, he just has it in his blood, and that should come as no surprise, well, because he is Canadian, right?
Well, duh. I mean, I don't know what they put in the fucking water in Canada, but I'm pretty sure Stu Hart just, like, you know, sweat into the wells in Canada.
He just sweats and bleeds. like he just takes his like workout shorts and like
wrings them
out in the water, and then you get professional wrestlers. But yeah, we lost Rowdy Roddy Piper today. 61.
Yeah, he was only 61. He died in his sleep, apparently.
Well, good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't something horrific.
By all accounts, it was relatively peaceful.
You know, I'm older, and it gets increasingly difficult to watch these people you've grown up with.
It's kind of surreal, isn't it?
Depart.
Yeah.
You know, my parents told me about this once when I was younger, about you're going to start seeing this at some point, that these people who you grew up with are just going to just go away, and it's going to be a weird void when you realize, oh my God, that person isn't here anymore.
Harold, you first realized that when Harold Ramis died.
Yeah, that was a really rough one. Because some of these people you just don't think are gonna they're gonna be around till they're 80 or 90. Not that their lives are gonna be cut like in middle age. It's just
that's really weird.
Yeah, when Harold Ramis is a big one because I was a big fan of his work. Ghostbusters, Caddyshack, Stripes.
God, that movie's funny.
And the one that hit me the hardest was probably Robin Williams because Robin.
Well, that was just ridiculous.
Robin was around literally, I think, since I was a baby. Like I remember being a little kid.
Mork and Mindy.
And then basically through every stage of my life, there was something Robin Williams around.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of evolved as I grew up.
Even shit like Patch Adams, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it was. But, through, like, Dead Poets Society and Fisher King.
Mm-hmm. Good Morning
Birdcage.
Good Morning Vietnam.
Good Morning Vietnam.
I love The Birdcage.
What Dreams May Come.
Oh, that movie makes me cry.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. And yeah, Popeye. Like, I mean, I saw that Popeye movie in the theater.
Aladdin,
like, he's always been there. And then suddenly to have this void... A world without Robin Williams, a world without Harold Ramis, a world without Christopher Lee, a world now without Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Christopher Lee has been 90 years old since I was a child.
He's another one. He's been involved. He was in so many things and just ever present in media that you love.
It's going to be weird when folks who like I've grown up with in the same way, and I don't even want to say their names because I'm superstitious, but the dynamic English duo that everyone loves so much, think X-Men movies.
Yeah, I mean that's soon. Yeah. Oh, we also recently lost Leonard Nimoy, right?
Yeah,
so,
I kind of blocked that one out a little bit.
I mean, that's actually more of a that's more of a boomer thing than me. Mm-hmm. With the original Star Trek cast. But,
Edward Herrmann died this year, too, of brain cancer.
Yeah. And then, there have been lots of other people as well.
Yeah.
The lead singer for Flesh for Lulu died.
Yeah, weird.
And it's, and now, God, when I was a kid watching Piper, like, you of course hated him because you were supposed to.
Well, yeah, he was a heel.
But I've gone back and watched so much of that and realized that this man, for what he was doing, was... in my estimation, better than Hulk Hogan. I mean, he was better at what he was doing than Hulk was.
Well, I mean, it doesn't take much to be better at anything than Hulk Hogan.
But let's give Hogan a bit of credit for being the right guy at the right time with the right look. He caught lightning in a bottle. Not entirely through his own agency, also through the people that helped him. Most notably, obviously, Vince McMahon. But also the people he worked with. Primarily a person like Rowdy Piper, right? So
no, fuck Hulk Hogan.
I know you want to constantly go back to that, but...
No, I hate him. I have always hated him. I hate him forever. And now he doesn't have a job anymore because he opened his big fat racist
Well, we can
mouth.
talk about that once we finish with Piper.
Dickbag.
As if you could ever finish with Piper. Piper had one of the...
Your nerd swell, like if you had plumage right about now, like it would be like riffing like Bruce Lee's lats, just like like a frilled lizard.
I love Piper.
I know, he's wonderful.
His smashing with the coconut thing.
Oh my God, so funny.
Was one of the best heel moments in pro wrestling ever.
And by all accounts, a relatively nice man too.
He came up the hard way in the business, and he told a story once on his podcast that made me really feel for him. When he was a kid and he was breaking in, he had the gimmick. He still had the gimmick at that point of being the Scotsman. So he would actually come to the ring, and he did know how to play the bagpipes. He would come to the ring and play the bagpipes.
That's hilarious.
And he was going to do it on his debut at some promotion. I can't remember which one, but Classy Freddie Blassie got his bagpipes and stuffed them with toilet paper.
Oh my God.
And when he got out there, and he said he was like 19, He got out there to play it, and he just couldn't play. And he actually had a breakdown. He apparently that kind of fucked him up for a long time. And I guess he and Freddie had heat for a long time because he just...
that's not funny.
No, but that's the kind of thing that the old timers always do to the up and coming kids.
Yeah, I can't remember what I was listening to, but someone was talking about how wonderful Stan Hansen was to everybody.
Is that true?
No, he was a dick.
That's exactly.
He was
I
was
want
a total dick.
I want to illustrate that for the audience who might not understand that you're being sarcastic there.
Yeah. I can't. God damn it! Who was it? It's gonna drive me crazy now. But yeah, he wrestled with him, and he's like, he was just fucking horrible to him.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's Stan Hansen. Roddy Piper's work in the 80s WWF, the Rock and Wrestling Connection era, is legendary. He was the heel of that. He made that. In wrestling, the face is only as beloved as the heel who is in conflict with him can be hated. And, Roddy did it probably better than anybody ever has. When he had the resurgence in the 90s during the Monday Night War, it was an amazing moment because in WCW with the NWO, Hulk Hogan had turned heel. He was the bad guy. It was this great thing.
The only time he was ever any good.
Because at this point, this guy, this superhero you loved, was now this evil, dark, manipulative, cowardly heel.
His beard was pretty epic, too.
Well, it's always epic. So there was a big surprise one night, and they brought out, the one man who could stand up against him, and it was Piper. And it was wonderful because it was this... If you'd been watching wrestling, I was in my 20s at this point, and I was 8 years old when WrestleMania.
That's when you're like,
ugh. And it was this wonderful switch of who was the good guy and who was the bad guy that was actually a narrative across 10 years.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And Roddy completely sold being a face, and he was wonderful at it. His promos then were pretty much... almost, I'm not going to say as good, but almost as good as his originals.
Nice.
It was just great stuff. Roddy went to Hollywood, I guess we could say, at some point and starred in a bunch of movies, one of which often gets forgotten, but it's called Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Oh my God, you've told me about this.
In which... It's basically Why the Last Man meets Mad Max because
Jesus Christ.
There are no more there are males, but there are no more viable males in a post-apocalyptic landscape, and he is the only one who is fertile. So they enlist him to impregnate women in the wastelands.
Jesus Christ!
It just so happens that the wastelands are also populated by radioactive mutant lizards and frogs.
Okay.
Co-starring Sandal Bergman, the Bob Fosse dancer. And fitness instructor who was also Valeria in Conan the Barbarian.
What?
Yeah, I think Hell Comes to Frogtown has a Blu-ray release, or at least a DVD release. It's pretty bad.
Shouldn't it be called Frogs Come to Helltown or something?
Well, his name is Hell. Get it?
Oh, okay.
Get it? Yeah.
Now I understand.
Yes.
That's great. This is a movie you're going to make me watch.
I might make you watch it. It's completely ridiculous.
Now, the 15th time you've told me about it.
I've told you about Hell Comes to Frogtown before?
Yeah, you have.
Well, not on the podcast, so now everybody can share in my joy for this movie.
I'm sure one of the 5 of you who listen have seen this, so...
And now you should all go out and watch it.
Yeah.
But famously, Piper was in a John Carpenter science fiction movie, and everybody knows this, but for those of you who don't, he was in a movie called They Live, which is one of the most important science fiction movies, maybe of all time. It's up there as far as its social commentary, and you wouldn't expect that from either John Carpenter or
Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper, but the two of them together put out one of the most socially relevant to this day movies. Concerning authority, power, and how it affects the working class. Amongst other things, it's also noted for having one of the best fight scenes in at least Western cinema history. It's choreographed completely by Piper and Keith David, and it's cool. I can't remember how long. It's 8 minutes. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you need to watch it. It's brutal, yet it's compelling, and you see Roddy's how pro wrestling really works, because he uses the fight in that movie to illustrate a story and show the two personalities of the two combatants involved. And if you've never seen They Live, you must see it. Go out, get it tomorrow, watch it. You'll love it. I guarantee it. Also stars, what's her name? Meg Foster, who was Evil Lynn in the He-Man, the original Dolph Lundgren, who I really love. She never got enough work for me, but she has the most ghostly, pale blue eyes. And Carpenter described her once as an actress as, like, you never know when she's looking at you whether she's going to fuck you or slit your throat. And that is a great look that she has.
Nice.
We bid a very fond farewell to the one and only Rowdy Roddy Piper.
May you rest in peace, sir.
Or raise hell wherever you are, dude. Like,
whatever the context of that phrase means to him.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
eat some haggis, club some people,
hit people with coconuts. Oh, so do you want to talk a little bit about this
Yes,
Hogan
I do.
thing?
Yes, I do.
So,
unsurprisingly to everyone ever with the brain, Hulk Hogan is a racist sack of shit.
Yeah.
And I would like to stop and clarify to all of you glorious people on the internet who are commenting. He got fired over a piece of audio that was released. It's not the audio where he's talking about how black people are friends with him. That's not what it is.
Right, and I was confused about that.
Yes.
That was like a radio show that he did where
That's not the piece that people are getting upset
right,
about.
because in that he uses the N-word, but he uses it in the context of this is what my black friends say to me, which is still just weird hearing him
Weird
talk.
and creepy.
It's weird and creepy.
He's trying to prove like his cred because he
Right.
knows some black people,
Yeah,
basically.
but I thought that, well, some people put that video out as being this is the video.
It's not the video.
And,
it's the
I was like, what's the big deal? I didn't see the big deal because obviously it's not that big of a deal. But as it turns out...
It's actually the beginning of his sex tape where he's telling his girlfriend how Brooke, his daughter, is dating a black man and uses the N-word copiously.
Can we, first of all, talk about
the fact that Hulk Hogan has a sex tape? And it's relatively recent.
And also that he's talking about his daughter either before, after, or during sex.
It's creepy.
That is really freaking creepy.
He's creepy. He's a creepy man, and he's a racist, creepy man. I went on a thread on a relatively popular comic book news site that shall not be named. And it was evenly divided between old white dudes who were like, that's not that bad, talking about the interview. The original interview.
Well, that's just, we're just misinformed on that
And then when faced with the actual reality, continued to say, it's not that bad. Meanwhile, a bunch of African-American men were like, wow, really, you didn't realize that wrestling is racist? Huh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And let's not...
Treating Hulk like he's somehow an anomaly.
Yeah, because they think that the person in the 80s, the character he played, is the actual person. It's kind of funny. We all know that wrestling is quote-unquote fake, even though that's the wrong word.
But these people mark out so fucking hard for this shit.
But they still believe that, like, that person is actually this way, and this person is actually that way. No. These are characters.
Mm-hmm. Terry is a punk ass.
Terry is a bitch. And he is most universally... The backstage stories about
he's a piece of shit.
He's a piece of shit, and that
he's a self-serving piece of shit.
Do you know what I found out recently? Is I was listening to an interview with Kevin Sullivan, who was it was the Timeline series where they go through a full year of a company, and the person basically narrates what happened. And it was 96, and I was watching it because you and I are doing the Revisiting the Monday Night Wars, and now we're in 96. So Kevin Sullivan was talking about the fact that the reason the Dungeon of Doom is involved in the main event, and I know you're going to find this interesting, is because he was referring to it as training wheels for Hulk Hogan to up his game. Meaning the Dungeon of Doom were, in Kevin's words, and he was a part of it, stupid cartoon comic book characters, and were not basically of the time. He put them in there to work with Hogan to basically make Hogan comfortable with the kind of shit he used to do. Like, okay,
are you fucking serious?
They were Kevin referred to it as getting him off the smack. because they had to like wrestle. He had to be involved in a product that he was comfortable with. Oh, cartoonish, ridiculous characters. And then they
because Lex Luger is not a cartoon.
Well, you know what I mean, though. In that, if you look at the Dungeon of Doom, they look like
it's Kevin
80s...
Sullivan in a fucking yellow bathrobe and fake eyebrows,
and the Zodiac, and all that.
Like, what the hell is going on?
But the whole point is that's closer to the silly product that Hulk Hogan used to wrestle with.
So what? They had
80s.
they had to put him in the kiddie pool first.
Exactly.
Are you kidding? He's a grown-ass man.
But they couldn't. Hogan himself was not comfortable working immediately, let's say, with Sting, Flair, the Horsemen. So they had to have him involved in things like the Giant. Nothing against the Giant with Big Show.
Big Show's great.
But like that personification it's something that is very childlike. It's very sophomoric. It's very silly.
Big Show was very young then.
And yeah, he was like 20. And Hogan... I
just don't like big dudes.
Me neither.
He's like, I love watching him because he's funny as hell.
Big Show's an amazing talent.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler. He's good on the mic. He's good for being a big dude. I just don't like big dudes.
Yeah, you and I agree basically that we're not really into giant man.
That moment on WWE though, when Randy Orton's daughter was in the front row and he went up to her and he goes, "I know who your daddy is." That was so cute.
I mean, hey, look, Paul's gotten into trouble through the
Paul
years
needs to keep his ding dong in his pants when the maid comes in the room.
Sometimes people mess up, but yeah, I thought you'd find that interesting.
Probably like an arm.
I thought you'd find that interesting about the Dungeon of Doom, and as it relates to Hogan.
Terry's a fucking bitch.
So yeah, and
anytime he shows up, he has to be the main man, and he runs companies into the fucking ground.
Yep. Thanks, TNA.
Thanks, yeah, thank you, Dixie, and all of you. I mean, Jeff Jarrett basically was like, "I'm the fuck out of here. I'm not dealing with this."
He cut and ran.
Yeah,
and
he was smart. He was absolutely smart.
And it's
Hogan
nothing.
shows up, and everyone gets fired below a certain weight, basically.
I mean, it's nothing against Dixie, just because I want to say that Dixie was probably, in a sense, conned. Like, she didn't think she was going to do harm. Like, it's Hogan, of course.
But he has a reputation. And then all of us, for like 2 weeks when he first arrived, like, on screen, and he had been there before that, obviously, everything was great. Like, shit was good, and then he had to be, like, on 2 times a night.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
And he had to be on 3 times a night. And then Brooks showed up. And then all this, and then he got back in the fucking ring with Rick.
Yep.
And, I don't want to see Ric Flair in his fucking underwear anymore. If that happened in public, they'd take him back to the fucking nursing home because then they'd label him as a flight risk.
It's true. Well, let's not insult Rick here. I think
he just looks like fried eggs falling off a wall. Like, I just can't deal with it.
That is a great image.
I just can't deal with it.
Let's get back to the
at least Ric Flair can actually fucking wrestle.
Yeah, and Rick, when it comes to backstage stuff, you hear different stories.
You hear
about
good
Rick.
Shit about Rick, and then you hear real bad shit about Rick.
And I'm sure that that's actually more accurate because he's a person. He makes mistakes. He has his own agenda, but he's also helped people.
He probably likes who he likes, and that's the end of it.
Hogan, on the other hand, it's almost universal hatred except for his boys.
Yeah, and he's like the nasty boys.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and he's fucking stupid. Terry is a stupid, whiny, self-serving sack of shit.
Pretty much.
I don't like him. I don't like his character. I don't like his politics. And I don't like what happens whenever he shows up anywhere.
Unlike, say, John Cena, who you and I don't really like as a character.
Nope.
But behind the scenes, I mean, he's been known to be manipulative too, but not to this degree. And John has done, like, what he's done with the Make-A-Wish type stuff, you cannot knock him.
John Cena wrestles better than Hogan ever did.
It's true. Which
is not saying much. I just watched a SmackDown like just 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
Where an announcer was, shouting his praises because of the move that he did off the second rope.
Okay.
The second I can do moves off the second rope.
Okay, something very interesting.
I'm 5'4".
Something interesting that has been happening to the evolution of Cena is with this influx of ROH talent in particular, which, I mean, you want to go down the list, you got John Moxley, Kevin Steen, El Generico, Claudio Castagnoli.
No one's going to know who they are.
Well, my whole point is that they should be looking up Pac, And not ROH,
Prince
but,
Devitt.
Yeah, well, Finn Balor. John has been doing more moves lately, and
because
I
he
think
has to.
It's smart for him because he has to visually compete with these other guys, and he sees what they're doing. So he's pulling out. He's doing like Hurricane Ranas. He does that second rope jumping stunner. That's the one you're talking about, and he's been doing like tornado DDTs. And part of it is like, well, good for you for obviously trying to adjust to what is going on.
And part of me is like, you know what, bite me. If you could do that the whole time, you should be doing it.
Exactly. Like you've been.
Fuck you, dude.
Yeah, but you know what? Also, at the same time, you have to think like he has to protect himself, right? Why take unnecessary risks with moves when you don't have to with the WWE product? So maybe that's it, you know. And now he's like, well,
maybe
I got to up my game.
they didn't let him do it.
It's possible. I mean, the WWE does outlaw moves.
That's hilarious.
That's why you don't really see high arc German suplexes anymore.
Really?
Because they're dangerous.
Well,
it's also why you don't see anybody other than like one or two people doing pile drivers.
Yeah, well, that's smart, actually, because, you know, you don't want Ryback giving you a fucking pile driver.
I wouldn't trust Ryback to give me a body slam.
You know, I have a love-hate relationship with Punk, but he has a point where he's
CM
like...
Punk?
Yeah, where he's like, every time I got in the ring with him, he hurt me.
Yeah.
And no one said shit. And there's that story where he goes, you know, like, are you doing this on purpose or are you just fucking stupid? And Ryback goes, oh, I guess I'm fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
good
what
job.
the hell?
Ryback said that never happened, but
I don't think...
Who do you want to believe? It's Ryback or CM Punk. I mean, it's up to you, the listener.
Let's count the brain cells and see who has more. I'm pretty sure Punk has more.
Yeah.
Racist.
Hogan, yeah. So he used the N-word in the N-word way.
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
And then he tries to be like, well, I'm not saying that all N-words, but N-words.
Right. And, you know,
It's like, what the fuck? Like, just shut up, dude.
Now, that sex tape is actually a couple years old. I don't know if you know that.
But it was unearthed, and the WWE was probably looking for an excuse to get him off their asses, and so they were like, boop, you're gone.
I really suspect that they don't want him around.
He just poisons everything. Also, they took him off the Hall of Fame page. They took him off everything. They pulled all his products, everything.
I don't know if that means he's technically out of the Hall of Fame.
No, I don't think he's going to be out of the Hall of Fame. That's like taking Big Bird off of Sesame Street. Like, you just can't do it.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, Big Bird
he was also yellow.
Big Bird never said he was going to lynch Oscar the Grouch, so...
Yeah, but I'm making the whole he used to wear yellow boas thing.
Yes, yeah, yes, which he stole from like superstar Billy Graham.
Who's that?
Yeah, no, some people will know who that is. That's fine.
Yeah, that's actually that's my grandfather's era.
You know, one of the things I thought that was really interesting about this is that it's not just the prevalence of the internet that is influencing things. It's not the fact that everybody knows what's going on thanks to TMZ that the WWE is forced to do this. I think Stephanie in particular and the WWE as a whole understands that culturally, and we talked about this privately at one point, culturally media is really swinging to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And they understand that bigotry, racism, sexism...
Continue.
They understand that these things are not entirely going to be tolerated in the same way it used to be. Now, it doesn't mean the WWE is perfect in its racial depictions, because we could just talk about something we watched on SmackDown.
I would like to point out that WrestleMania 2-3 years ago, when Brodus Clay came out and they had all the dancers dancing around like his mom and they had their butts stuffed.
And some of them were obviously in blackface. Yeah,
this is fucking WrestleMania. That was one of the most racist things I've ever seen in wrestling. It was unfucking real. Like, I could not believe that was actually happening now. Like, this is not a freaking vaudeville show where you're in blackface. Like, no, stop it.
Yeah, it's...
not that it was excusable then. It sure as hell is not excusable now.
I think that would not happen, like, now. I think if, like, WrestleMania...
I didn't see anyone on the internet freaking out about that either.
Oh, there were. It just wasn't prevalent. I mean...
Not a lot of people watch wrestling, so... Not a lot of smart people. Well, never mind. Sorry, guys.
No.
Not a lot of people I know.
There are a lot of smart minorities who are watching wrestling.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
And they point this out all the time. But like a lot of things, I mean,
there are not a lot of smart white people who watch wrestling.
White people who experience when they see racism and there's that click and it's a revelation to them because they've never had to live with it.
Yep.
It becomes much more of a big like you see a lot of outrage. Well, if you go to like an African American and they'll be like, "Yeah, what? You're surprised?" Like,
yeah,
they
exactly.
live with
like
it every
this is
day.
my lived reality. This is not like, "How dare you?"
Of course, wrestling is racist, and of course, we still kind of love it because of
it's
what it is.
It's problematic.
It's very problematic.
Like
and
every person of color has to have a racist gimmick.
But
they can't just be a wrestler.
That is really only in WWE, really.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. Like, let's list some. Umaga, for example.
Now, you're going back a couple years, so it's some,
Brodus Clay.
But was Brodus Clay a racial gimmick?
Yes, because he was actually, like, shucking and jiving.
Okay, fine.
R-Truth has to be, the thug.
Well, that really is shucking and jiving.
Yeah, he has to be the thug, basically, who's crazy, quote unquote.
And what about the whole thing of he's stealing championship belts?
They basically depict him like what a white person thinks of an African-American crack addict in the 80s.
Who's also kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention the fact that he's an amazing wrestler and can beat the pants off of just about anybody.
Former TNA world champion.
Yeah. I saw him probably the most in the Money in the Bank matches and King of the Ring and all that stuff. And he just was just like beating the pants off of people.
As an athlete, that guy's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And they just never gave him a fucking chance.
No, I mean, he mid-Carter for life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Kofi Kingston, mid-Carter for life. God bless him. I love him. And,
Kofi has been somebody who's been, I want to say he's avoided complete racial gimmicks to a certain degree. It's always going to be there if you're in the WWE.
Well, because they're going to be like, do you want to get paid? Yes, then do this.
Well, you're black, so you got to have a blackish gimmick, right?
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out that, for instance, the most recent ROH pay-per-view, the main event was Jay Lethal.
Yeah, because he is a fucking main eventer.
The world champion and world television champion, defending against Roderick Strong, and they had a 60-minute time limit draw.
Jesus Christ. I would also like to point out that Jay Lethal was on an amazing trajectory in TNA until Hogan showed up. And then all of a sudden he's gone. And I'm like, you were pushing him for the title. What happened?
Against Ric Flair. Ric Flair was helping elevate him.
His flare off that he had with him was
Flair?
just awesome. His Flair impression was so good.
There are moments because he was doing the impersonations and he was doing Ric Flair and Macho Man before Flair had gotten to TNA. And you always think things like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if
and then it happened.
And then it happened.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, my God, he's doing Ric Flair to Ric Flair.
He put Flair in the figure 4 and Flair tapped.
It was wonderful.
Not that Jay Lethal ever needed anyone's help to get over, but it's, Flair helped to get him over.
Okay, so you not only had that, this amazing performance by Jay Lethal, but you also had Cedric Alexander versus Moose, who had Stokely Hathaway with him. So you have 3 African-American gentlemen in one angle. Okay, there was nothing about ethnicity in this match or with their gimmicks at all. And later on in the card, there's also ACH, who's one of the top rising stars in ROH. Same thing. There's nothing ethnic about his gimmick. He's ACH.
There's nothing ethnic about Shelton Benjamin's gimmick in ROH either. He just beats your ass. Because he's so fucking good.
Meanwhile, if you go to the WWE, you have to go through this gatekeeping of, well, what's your story? I'm from Atlanta, from a poor family. Oh, you should have a rapper gimmick.
Remember Crime Time?
Which was really funny.
But at the same time, the joke, it wasn't done tongue-in-cheek. The joke is on them, basically. The joke is on them, and it's so white people can laugh at the hood rats, quote-unquote.
Yep.
Now, Elijah Pope is somewhat interesting because he kind of had a half-preacher, half-pimp gimmick. But it was interesting because he actually had more of a character.
It's true. And it seemed to fit him.
It seems like it might have been something, and I'm not sure if this is true, it might have been something that he helped build
Well, that was when he was in TNA.
Yes.
When he was strictly Elijah Burke in specifically the rebranding of ECW, there was none. He was just Elijah Burke.
Yeah,
right?
so I'm not sure, and it's hard to tell with him because he's just so chill anytime he's interviewed.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell if it was actually something he liked or something that he was just like, nah, whatever.
Well, I get the impression that a lot of these guys, when they're in the WWE, it's just par for the course. Like, you're going to have Michael Hayes sitting there telling you you're going to be a rapper or a criminal.
Fucking asshole.
Or a matador.
Douchebag.
I mean, really?
Oh, and
Matadors?
you're the little person, so you get to be the bull. And it's funny because you're tiny.
Ha ha.
Like, fuck you.
It gets a little. But my whole point also was that it seems to me, just from what I'm reading from, the press releases and what people are saying, that the WWE understands that they can't entirely be as forgiving of nonsense that maybe they once were, simply because a guy is a draw.
Well, we talked about how wrestling's about 10 to 15 years behind everything. So wrestling's basically hitting the 90s now.
Well, in particular, WWE is
yes,
hitting
that's what I'm saying, like big box wrestling.
Right. So they finally understand that maybe politically correct is a little bit better to lean in that direction.
And maybe people just don't want to see the same shit over and over again, too.
Right.
I'd be really interested to hear a Shoot Booker interview about his gimmicks over the years.
He's done some Shoot interviews. I'd be curious. I had never seen them, but you remember? You haven't gotten to this point in WCW, but he did a gimmick at one point called GI Bro. Yeah.
Wait, like GI Brother?
Yep.
Oh my God. I thought it was GI Bro, like bruh, Oof. That's not okay.
Yeah. He
Wow.
I can't remember.
Fucked up.
I can't remember the faction he was a part of, but their hot sexy valet was, Major Guns, and she had, enormous.
For fuck's sake. So annoying. I did appreciate the King Booker gimmick just because he was basically making fun of white people and then he just hooded out on people.
And that seemed to me like it was probably his
idea. Yeah, it probably was, hopefully. I'm hoping.
To be and that was a gimmick that really, in my opinion, hit its stride in TNA, not in WWE. Because when he was a part of the Main Event Mafia, he upped that aspect of that character incredibly. So he would be he would literally go, "Well, yes, Sean Mel." I went, "What you talking about?" It was awesome.
So there's kind of, not to be all literary about it, there's an interesting dichotomy and an interesting interrogation going on there. You're kind of poking at something and showing people something. Yeah. It's like, here's the articulate black man who's just like, you know what, fuck you.
And it's wrestling being lowbrow, populist, entertainment. We've talked about this before. Is always going to have kind of an uncomfortable relationship.
It's going to cater to the lowest common denominator
with social critiques like this.
But that's still not an excuse because we have so many smart marks now too. It's like you really don't. There's no excuse for you to do the same shit. Like, ooh, he's from Hawaii. Let's put a grass skirt on him.
Yeah.
Or, oh, he's Samoan. I'd really love for you to tell Samoa Joe that he has to wear a grass skirt and carry a torch.
Well, so far they have not been doing that to him.
Really love to see how that conversation would go.
So far they have not done that. So,
or you know how
God.
Every Japanese wrestler has to be like a Shinto priest or something.
Or just act overly Japanese.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a case where somebody recently did it much worse than WWE. I mean, with Kenta in NXT, they basically let him be Kenta.
Yeah.
But when Okada was in TNA, they gave him a Kato fucking gimmick that was
God
horrendous. If you're watching the New Japan stuff now and you go back and watch TNA with him, it's embarrassing that Okada is one of the top performers in the world. And they're basically relegating him to stand in the background in a mask while Joe did promos. It was horrendous.
That's pretty weird. And that's also, darkly funny because I'm sure they're friends.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And I'm
like
sure,
I said,
yeah.
Like I said, I'm sure there's a certain amount of absolute understanding that American primetime wrestling, for lack of another term, is going to be exploitation.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the Japanese companies for years have been sending their dudes up and just, like, collect a paycheck and then come back. Like,
or learn,
Yeah.
I mean, most of it's done for learning. Like, learn how to work with these other guys, learn how to do American style. I mean, it's the same reason we go over there, right? Learn the Japanese style.
wrestle with the White Devils and then come back.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is now you see that Japanese wrestling is being influenced.
It's interesting.
Both with gimmicks like the Bullet Club, and I mean Okada's gimmick as the Rainmaker is kind of Western.
But they have more and more gaijin coming over who kind of were brought up in Japanese wrestling too, which is interesting.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of these indie guys were tape traders in the 90s and grew up as smart marks, so they know all about this stuff.
Hulk Hogan finally opened his mouth enough to where someone was like, you know what, I'm done.
In relation to this subject, did you read what Stephanie said about his release?
No.
I mean, Stephanie basically said that the WWE wants to embrace diversity of all kinds, and we don't tolerate racism. Right? That's what it said.
Ha!
Well,
Fire Michael Hayes.
You know what? We don't even know if he's still there. We just like using him as a punching bag.
Fuck
because
that man.
He was known to be incredibly racist.
He's a piece of shit. There is an amazing interview, and I can't. Speaking of folks who have passed away,
is this the Dusty Rhodes one?
This is the Dusty Rhodes interview. Michael Hayes, it's an hour long, and I can't even remember what they're talking about. But it's Dusty and Michael and a couple other people, and Michael keeps taking shots at Dusty the whole time. And Dusty at one point just folds his hands on the table and looks at Michael, and I'm like, Michael, if this was a drag show, the shade would have suffocated you. Because seriously, Dusty's just like, this bitch. Like, really?
What do you mean, if this was a drag show?
But he's just like, ugh. Like, fuck you, man.
Come on.
If you will.
You've watched Drag Race. The only real difference between
Drag Race, I've been to drag shows.
The only real difference between pro wrestling and RuPaul's Drag Race
is the heels. And the tux.
I was going to say that the violence is actually carried out instead of just verbal.
Remember when they did a wrestling show on Drag Race?
Absolutely.
It was awesome.
They're very close tied together. Sorry. I know you don't want to hear that, but...
Yeah. So, also, another good example, and we've brought this up before, Orlando Jordan wasn't just creepy and perverted because he was bisexual. He was creepy and perverted because he was black.
Yeah, it was... And
that was the unspoken thing of, like, here's this big, magnificent, very sculpted, beautiful man, and ooh, he's bisexual, and ooh, he's African-American. He's so creepy. And I really didn't appreciate that.
Yeah. Yet again, I don't know.
And they put him against the biggest, whitest person ever. Rob Terry is Welsh. He's not even English. Like, who's whiter than an Irishman? A Welshman. Fuck.
So, also, with Stephanie's saying that, they want to embrace diversity, what I thought was interesting is that right before this happened, I didn't even know this, but pro wrestler Darren Young is African-American and openly gay. And,
fuck, dude.
And,
my heart goes out to him.
He would not have been able to do that.
No.
10 years ago.
Nope.
Now, you and I have talked about the fact that pro wrestling has such a history of being a home to freakish type people. And I don't want to equate any type of lifestyle as being freakish, but you get fringe people in society.
But the problem is you get like fringe rednecks too.
Exactly. And it ends up being a very weird mixture of urban culture, rural culture, subcultures.
And there have been people along the way, I'm sure, who are probably just accepted as, oh, he's one of our gays. You leave
Pat
him.
Patterson.
Yeah,
or Jason.
You leave him alone, basically. Right. Like, he's our token queer. Like, he's all right with us.
Yeah, and they all have
hopefully Darren doesn't have to deal with any of that shit.
They all have a laugh about it backstage, and then they just like, oh, hey, go out there and be gay for the crowd so they can hate you. Yeah, no problem. it's and we've talked about the tradition of the Exoticos from Lucha Libre. Yeah. So
and Pat Patterson is gay as fuck.
Oh,
seriously.
Gay as hell.
He's just like, girl. And I'm like, whoa, dude. You didn't even have to tell me. He opened his mouth in an interview, and I was like, son of a bitch.
And most people would not have picked up on that.
Really? Because he's gay as fuck.
Yeah.
He is a Bob Fosse queen. Like, for real. Snatching trophies.
Stephanie was also questioned about something, and she said that there is probably going to be a character at some point whose gimmick she didn't say his gimmick was that he was going to be gay, but the character was going to be homosexual.
I wonder if it's going to be Darren or if they're going to choose somebody else.
Well, that's what was interesting. Is like that's what people said. Is it going to be the actual homosexual person you have that is at least out? I mean, there are probably others.
There are others.
Statistically speaking, there has to be, right?
Solely statistically speaking, but come on.
Right. So. Or is it going to be somebody else? And either way, is it a good or a bad thing if you do that? Is it good if you allow the homosexual man to be homosexual on screen?
I don't know. It entirely depends on who it is and how it's written and how it's played.
It really does come down to application.
Because as intriguing as Goldust is and was, we can't do that anymore.
No, you can't.
It can't be like the demon pervert. It's not going to work.
Well, the update that Cody is doing, the Stardust character, the
Stardust
sexuality...
is awesome.
The sexuality is not really what it's about at all. His is much more straight-up supervillain.
It's great. He's being like Mark Hamill Trickster from The Flash.
Yeah, he's kind of halfway between a Batman villain and Ziggy Stardust. Like,
yeah,
literally,
it's so weird.
It's amazing. Incredibly compelling, and it seems... Unlike a lot of gimmicks where you kind of get tired of it, the Stardust thing...
I keep watching because I don't know what he's going to do next, and I'm like, ooh.
The Stardust thing, in my opinion, seems to be gathering momentum. It's actually getting better the more Cody does it, and it's one of my favorite things right now.
I love Pac. I love him. Adrian Neville.
You and me both.
But when it comes to promos... Cody is carrying him.
Of course.
Because Pac's a hell of a lot better than he used to be. He's still wooden as hell on the mic.
Yeah, he needs help. He needs development.
I mean, he's not Bret Hart wooden, but...
Well, yeah, he can at least kind of, utter a sentence without flubbing it.
Like, what? Bret Hart probably just doesn't like talking to people.
No, he does. Bret's not a very good talker. He just never was.
No, he just wants to get in the ring and make you submit.
Yeah. I mean, it's
totally fine.
It's an older school kind of thing. He didn't entirely fit in with the Attitude Era because of that. And
that opens a whole can of worms.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
Yes, ding dong, Hogan is dead, and I hope he goes away forever.
He's not actually dead.
I know. I'm just saying. I really actually hope that Ric Flair outlives him.
Oh, me too.
I'm pretty sure Ric Flair is never going to die.
Don't say it.
Knock on wood.
So once it was announced that Hogan was leaving, did you see his absolutely fucking ponderous fucking statement?
No, because I don't care.
Basically, it was one of these, the Lord will put me in the right place kind of comments that
Is
people
the Lord going to put your anus around my foot? Because that's the right place.
It's the kind of thing people say when they've gotten caught fucking up. And instead of just going, hey, I said something really messed up in a moment that I thought was private, I'm very sorry. No, it's like the Lord has a plan for me.
I'm very sorry. I have black friends,
By the way, I believe in God. That makes me okay. And yes, I have friends that are black.
Well, I'm pretty sure if God talked to you, he'd be like, "So what's up with this whole hating black people thing?"
Yeah, what's up with that?
Stop.
What's up with that, Hulk Hogan? So do your training, eat your vitamins, but
fuck those brown people.
Hate on these people. That doesn't make any sense, dude.
Douchebag. I fucking hate him.
I think we spent more time talking about Hogan than we did about Piper, but...
Well, I have good things to say about Roddy.
And we said them, and this is Bloodbath, so...
Well, you like to just bring shit up because I get angry.
You said you wanted to talk about wrestling stuff.
Yeah, I did, and he's a fucking flaming piece of shit, and I want to step on his face. I want to snatch those stupid extensions off the back of his bald-ass head.
Do you have any more wrestling stuff you want to talk about, or is that it? Because we have some other stuff that we can go into.
I hate Jack Swagger.
Yeah, Jack Swagger's awful.
He looks creepy. Maybe really creepy. If he showed up at the strip club, he'd want some really fucked up shit. He'd pick, the youngest girl in the club and go in the champagne room for, 3 hours.
I think it's important to point out that you're speaking completely figuratively and
I am solely basing this on, the shape of his face.
Right.
And the fact that I really hate his gimmick.
Right.
I'm not actually maligning the person behind this character.
He might actually be, the nicest guy ever.
I'm sure he probably is, but he just looks creepy. There's something wrong.
we just like to throw shit. So, sorry. That's
whatever.
That is.
He could kick my ass in real life.
But you have discovered the joy that is Rusev recently.
Oh my God, he's built like a house, and so to compare him to someone else who never shuts up in the ring. There's a difference between someone like Rusev, who's just like he just screams at people, and he
in another language.
And I went and looked up some information about him. He is Bulgarian.
Yep.
He was a power lifter and a rower when he was growing up, so he's an athlete. When he first hit FCW, he tore his meniscus and something else.
That's
And
horrendous.
spent 6 months rehabbing. Broke his neck later on, and when he rehabbed, went to Thailand to learn Muay Thai.
Okay, can we talk about, just really briefly, that is like one of the most badass things ever? Like, you can talk about pro wrestling being fake and choreographed, and it is, but which is not the point.
But you actually have to have, like, stamina to do this.
Yeah, you have to be a tough guy to be able to hang and do this stuff day after day, week after week, year after year. The fact that he could go do that is amazing.
He rehabbed a broken neck by doing Muay Thai.
In Thailand. That's what's amazing.
What the fuck?
This wasn't like, Taibo down at the fucking gym. This was in
YMCA.
Thailand kicking a tree until coconuts fall off and hit you in the head.
Don't be mean to Billy Blank. Taibo's hard, dude.
I'm not saying it's hard.
You gotta have your cardio game set for that. Oof.
I'm just saying that it ain't Muay Thai kickboxing.
It makes you so angry because it's so dumb, but then you're like, I'm winded. Why is this happening? But yeah, so I just watched a match that was Jack Swagger versus Rusev, and I'm like, just like, it's one of those things where the reality of what like those two people in the ring together would be does not match what's happening on the screen.
True.
Like, Rusev could pick him up and break him in half.
But so could Jack Swagger. I mean, Jack Swagger could actually perform a lot better than he usually does.
But he can't break Rusev in half. That's my point.
I doubt anybody could.
No.
I mean, the guy is a cinder block.
It's like when I see Mark Henry wrestling people, I get bored. Because if Mark Henry decided to, he could just like pop someone's head with his hands.
If he catches them.
He is a large man.
He's large, but the fact is that, like, in a real fight, a guy like that is useless.
Yeah, but Rusev, not so much. He's very fast for a big dude.
Nobody in mixed martial arts looks like Mark Henry.
No, that's true. A lot of people look like Rusev, though.
In the heavyweights, but most people actually look... I mean, you look at Anderson Silva, and the guy is string bean.
He looks like he's dancing his fists across your face, and then people just fall down, and I'm like, God damn it, he's terrifying. But yeah, God, remember the Mark Henry sexual chocolate chant? That was kind of rough.
He still gets those.
I know.
He still gets those
and
all the time.
The best one was when John Cena was like, I don't know, I guess they want to have sex with chocolate.
Haha.
The shit thing about John Cena is he's actually quite good on the mic.
Oh, he's actually fantastic on the mic.
When he and Rock were going back and forth with the songs...
I actually think that John was better in those promos than The Rock was. And
I absolutely do.
I think that's really saying something.
John is excellent because he's very dry, actually, and he's just very comfortable, I think, on the mic.
Yeah, he's a natural. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely natural. If he was not a professional athlete / pro wrestler, he would have probably done something that actually requires verbal skills.
Yeah, public speaking.
Something involved in public speaking.
Probably would have run for office. Might have been a motivational speaker. Well, I mean, he had that fabulous rap career.
His linguistic intelligence, if you want to use the 7 intelligence model, is pretty fantastic. I mean, that's what's impressive about him.
But the scary thing is like he's like a Marky Mark clone.
Well,
if Mark Wahlberg did steroids, he'd be John Cena.
You know, you want to talk about like when Vince at
maybe
WWE,
with less racial hate crimes.
When Vince sees somebody, often the gimmick that he comes up with, or whoever comes with, is immediately based on the first impression. That horrendous story of Colt Cabana where...
Like Jackie Gleason.
Like Jackie Gleason.
Oh, God.
To show how out of date and out of touch he is.
Son of a bitch.
So, yeah, you looked at John Cena at the time and you're like, you look like Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. So let's give you that gimmick.
Mark Wahlberg.
And honestly, you know, I got to say that the racial things are not... It is much more toxic with people of color, but it doesn't matter in the WWE. Like Rusev, like they could give him any gimmick, but he's Bulgarian, so his gimmick is he's Bulgarian.
Wrestling is very obvious, so they'll go for kind of like the low hanging fruit.
Right.
Unfortunately, the low hanging fruit is that you're black.
Right.
And like that's not a gimmick. Like, it shouldn't be like, well, you know, you have black skin, therefore you must be from Africa.
Right.
By that extension,
or from the street.
It should be like, you have boobs. Well, that's not a good example because
No,
they
it's
do
not.
treat all the divas like strippers. But, like, you know, you wear pants. Therefore, you must be a pants salesman. Like,
right.
no.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the whole thing of, like, you know, white is the default, quote unquote.
And you also got to have something that's relatively simple to get across to the schlubs in row A,
So
right?
so you have to balance it, but it's like, you know, everyone's like, oh, that person's a black person and he's acting like a black person.
Right.
Like, just stop it.
Right. It's Sheamus, too. I mean,
oh, my God.
You're from Ireland?
Oh,
I
my
guess
God.
everything about you has to be how Irish you are.
I hate him so much. He's doing the whole, like, Vikings thing with his fucking beard and the beads in it, and I just hate him. He wrestled Dean Ambrose on SmackDown last week, and it was just like, really, dude? Really? Like, he was gassed by the end of the match.
Look at the guy.
I don't like him. I find him incredibly boring.
Yeah, I don't think there's any performer as dull as Sheamus is right now in the WWE, except maybe Ryback.
Well, Ryback, you know, there's an element of surprise because it's like, is he going to kill somebody
in
the ring
somebody
today?
in the ring? Well, you get that with Sheamus, too. I mean, Sheamus is the guy that has put Daniel Bryan out, so...
Yeah, didn't he put Dolph Ziggler out, too?
I think that's what they were saying. I actually missed
Or is that a work?
I haven't checked, and I didn't watch that week, so I don't know.
Ridiculous.
So that concludes the first part of this two-part podcast, mainly concerned with various wrestling talk from the Bloodbath crew. We'll be back next where we will examine the trailers for Dawn of Justice and Suicide Squad. So please go to iTunes, give us a rating, send us an email, look us up on Facebook. Please get in touch with us. We love to discuss, debate, argue, and say hi to all the bloodbathers out there. Don't be shy. We love having contact with the audience, and we'd like to get enough contact so we can actually start talking about some of the things you guys are saying about us and about the things that we're discussing. So please send us an email, give us a rating, and we will talk to you later.
You can start now.
What are you talking about?
The girl. I've injected her with Ovidol to facilitate procreation. That's why you're here, remember?
Just like that?
Yeah, she's ovulating and you've got a high count. Let's go.
Oh, come on. I can't work like this.
Come on, Hellman. It's late and I'm tired.
She's never ever brushed her teeth.
What is the matter?
Well, she's not my type, huh?
Your type?
Yeah.
You have preferences.
Well, yeah, you know, if I kind of know her and there's a little chemistry there and, you know, a little atmosphere would be nice.
Oh, next you're going to be telling me you have to be in love first?
Well, maybe you ought to try making love to a complete stranger in the middle of a hostile mutant territory. See how you like it.
I used to worry about what people thought about me. Now I don't care less. As you can plainly see, they said I was stupid. They said I